Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, some big breaking news just minutes ago. A person has been detained for questioning in the Nancy Guthrie case. The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother. And now there may be an enormous break in this case. And what an action-packed day it has been, guys. Of course, the video came out from the doorbell. And that video is actually extremely clear. You can see a masked, armed intruder coming to the house. But you can also pretty clearly see the eyes. You can see the eyebrows. It looks like a pretty distinguishable set of eyebrows, in fact. Very well manicured. I thought it was a woman at first. Then also you see a mustache and you see the gait of the individual, how tall they may be. Also, a lot of the clothing. They got a backpack and they're there trying to disable the Ring camera. Now, FBI, thank goodness, found that video and it looks like the doors have opened wide in this case, busted wide open. And in the last hour or two, also the bomb squad from Pima County rushed out to the scene southeast of Tucson, which is on the way to the border, by the way, guys. Also, a hostage negotiating team also went out, and a SWAT team went out. And now, in the last few minutes, an individual has been detained for questioning in the Nancy Guthrie case. This is the first time that we have heard of anyone being detained in connection with the case. So many questions tonight, and we're going to be talking a lot about that. Also, Betsy Brantner Smith, who is a former hostage negotiator trained by the FBI, also a spokesperson with the National Police Association. She is on the ground there in Tucson. She lives in the area, knows the situation very well. She is going to be joining us in about 25 minutes or so with a big update from the scene. So you definitely want to stay tuned to that. Do you think this case is going to be solved at any minute? It very well could be. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show on what is an extremely busy news night. And this case hopefully will be solved very soon. And let's pray that Nancy Guthrie is alive and comes home soon. Boy, would that be great news. It's incredible that they got that footage from the Ring cameras, of course, going through Google. Nest then got to the cloud. They were able to access that information. And the black and white footage that has come out is pretty clear. Obviously, the individual is trying to hide their identity with these big gloves and a ski mask on and a whole bunch of other stuff. But they're carrying a big backpack. And they seem very familiar with the house where Nancy Guthrie was living. They don't seem to be in a rush. That's the other thing that's interesting. It seems like certainly someone who is familiar with that area, with the territory, probably knowing who's inside, knowing it's an 84-year-old woman who maybe can't move very quickly or move very far, knowing that they don't have to really rush. So the question is this a one-person job? Is it a multiple person job? And if you knew that person, do you think you'd be able to say, yeah, I recognize that person? I actually think you could, because the eyebrows are so distinguishable and they look like obviously a Caucasian. It looks like a man, but they could quickly put together through AI intelligence, be able to put facial recognition. Even if they have a ski mask on, you can get the sense of the person's frame, the sense of the distance between the eyebrows, the distance with the nose, the mouth. Again, it looks like a mustache. Also, the ski mask is very interesting. There's interesting stitching around the eyes. Did that person just buy the stuff that day and throw it out? Who bought it that day? Where did they buy it? There are so many details tonight. And also we're hearing that there's been a lot of activity around the house of Annie Guthrie. That is the sister of Savannah Guthrie. That's the house that she shares with her husband. And there are a lot of questions, maybe tied to somebody who knows the family, maybe even a family member peripherally. Who knows? There are so many questions tonight. But listen, things are breaking fast and furious. And maybe even within this show, there may be a resolution to this enormous case that has gotten such huge attention and captivated the world, wondering what could have happened in this case. Here is, first of all, this is former FBI agent Brad Garrett, and he was talking earlier today about that footage, the doorbell footage, and how significant it is. Take a listen.
The backpack, he seems to, it's not a huge backpack. It looks like something he's really comfortable in wearing, which my guess is he wears it all the time. And I say that if people look at this image and they look at the ski mask, but maybe look at the eyes, look at maybe facial hair, and the backpack and the way he's walking, and somebody may say, well, that guy lives down the street from me. And that's exactly what police are looking for. And so the common things that people, even people that would commit this type of horrendous crime, are still going to do things in a routine way of how they do them. And I think all of that, plays into the favor, in addition to the type of crime it is. I mean, people from all walks of life probably would come forward to give up this guy. But there are unique characteristics about this picture. In other words, as Aaron mentioned, you can see his eyes. There's a possibility around his mouth that there's some facial hair. But what jumped out at me were two things specifically is the backpack that he had on looked, all we can see is the straps, of course, but looked very different. And then it looks like he has two lights attached to the top of the strap of the backpack, which would make sense, of course, if he's going into a dark house. That also may suggest to me that he didn't drive up to that house. There are these dry creek beds behind Nancy's house that lead to other roads, that he may well have walked up one of those trails to get in her house. I'm only saying that is, and my guess is they've done follow-up of this, but to check that out. But those lights on the backpack, and the gloves even look somewhat unique to me. So when people go to look at this photograph, you're going to want to point out to them some of the things I just mentioned, because this guy may have worn that backpack around with those lights on. Maybe he hikes a lot. Who knows? But it would be interesting for, that to be sort of the clincher of at least figuring out who he is. Because my sense is going to be he's the key to this case.
Yeah, no doubt he's the key to this case. You don't just show up at a house totally ready to do a break-in and have a loaded gun with you and have a backpack with so many things going into the house. And again, we have not heard of anything taken from the house other than the mother. So who is this guy? Was he acting on his own volition? Did somebody hire him? There are a lot of questions tonight, and I agree. There's so many items, whether it's that backpack, whether it is the clothing, whether it's the shoes, whether it's that ski mask as we're talking, maybe it's a certain kind of sneakers. And if you look at all of these things, you look at the tiles, you guys, he's walking on these tiles on the porch leading to the door. They probably already have a shoe size. You just have to do the shoe in relation to the size of the tiles. You know what size the tiles are. You can get an approximate shoe size, height, weight. You see the way the person's walking with their gait. They obviously were not prepared for that camera. And then they try to put it looks like flowers to try to block the camera. So there certainly seems to be some surprises. And then we're hearing that there's some activity in the Bitcoin account tonight. Potentially, maybe it's FBI testing it out. Maybe it's one of the abductors. Not a big amount of money, but it sounds like there's at least something kind of going on there. Maybe it's another way to trace this individual down. Now, here is former homicide detective Pat Diaz, and he is saying what he garners from that black and white footage that came out a little bit ago.
In this type of case where you have 2 ransom notes, they're not going to keep her anywhere close to the scene or even in Tucson. They probably moved her out. And you got to remember, the police and the FBI are doing one investigation, and the family often feels frustrated that they're not hearing anything going on. So with that, that's why we heard the plea from Savannah yesterday. But behind the scenes, you got to remember, this was probably a 20,000 square foot house with a lot of area to cover. So this was a professional group that came in under darkness. So there's a lot of areas in this house that needed to be processed. And that's why every day there was something else they came back to do. This all should have been done from the beginning. And that at times could frustrate a family. Being involved in 1,000 homicide investigations, you always have family that want to know what's going on. Why is there no movement? And behind the scenes, not everything you can tell them what's going on.
Yeah, Pat, you used the phrase professional group. This seems very clean. It was done at a very professional level, or were there just mistakes made? Why do you say professional group?
You got to remember, they did it under cover of darkness. So it's not 1 or 2 people. It needs to be a couple, 3 to 4 people that came in. They have to search the house to make sure they have no idea. Even if you do a surveillance, they have no idea who may have been in the house. So whoever done this went through the house first and also had to stand by with Nancy. So that's why I think it was done professionally, and they were able to leave under the darkness and get out of town.
And again, tonight we are hearing that the bomb squad, also a SWAT team, is en route and still doing activities southeast of Tucson. And also, we're just getting word now that the FBI director says that they are investigating persons of interest in the Guthrie case. This comes as a single person has been detained for questioning in the Nancy Guthrie case. So many big developments, but it looks like putting out that footage has cracked this case wide open. Let's go to Joaquin in Pennsylvania. Joaquin, your thoughts tonight here on the Rita Cosby Show, my friend.
Good evening, Rita. It's funny. I'm sitting here. I'm actually staring at the picture of the guy in the mask in the entryway there. And, when I watched the video, the thing that disturbs me the most is just how calmly he's walking around, so familiar with everything. You know what I'm saying?
What does that say to you? Joaquin, I see the exact same thing. He looks very comfortable, although he seems a little surprised by the camera because it doesn't seem like he planned for the camera there, and now he's trying to cover it up. That's what we see. But so that may have taken him for a lark, but still, he does seem extremely familiar and not in any rush.
No. And there's something else. I'm staring at the gun. I'm trying to block, but it's such a grainy picture, and I don't know why. There's something about that that's bothering me. That doesn't seem right, especially the way he's carrying it. I guess maybe he wants to have it completely ready, but there's just something about that doesn't seem right.
Now, this is interesting. Betsy Brantner-Smith, who's going to be joining us shortly, Joaquin, she was messaging me earlier, and she said that the guy was carrying the gun in what is known as a Mexican carry. And not to read anything into this, but she said it's very common with gangs and cartel members that they carry the gun that way. Not that, we don't know if that's the case or if he just saw people carrying it that way or if he did it for some convenience. But she said as soon as she saw that was a very familiar style to some individuals in that area.
Yeah, to me, I've got a lot of experience with handguns, and quite frankly, I've never carried one like that. That's why it just caught my eye, and I'm staring at it. It just, to me, doesn't look right.
Yeah, it does. You're right. By the way, it does. It looks very awkward. You're absolutely right. It looks awkward and it looks clumsy, and it's not sort of a natural style. But she is saying that that's a fairly familiar route. What else troubles you when you look at the footage, Joaquin? What else do you think of when you hear that makes you think there's something puzzling when you see that shot? I mean, it's a very clear image of the individual, Joaquin, and to me, it's very obvious. You see the eyebrows. Like, if I knew that person, I think I'd be able to say, oh, that's so-and-so. What do you think?
You know, when he walked over to pick up the piece of shrubbery or whatever, it seems like he's got a little bit of a bubble butt, or however you want to put it, not exactly too svelte. But I'm actually also looking at USA, the timeline. Do you know who actually dropped her off at her house that night after the family gathering?
Well, originally they said Annie, the sister's husband, and then they went back and said, well, family did. But originally it was supposed to be the sister's husband was the initial reports, and then they backed away. I mean, there are so many questions, but the family has come out and said they don't recognize the person in that footage. That's according to NBC. They said that the family doesn't recognize the footage, and that's why they decided to put it out to the public. Boy, oh boy. But I agree with you. I think if you knew the person, it would be like, that's my neighbor, or that's that guy, or that's that strange person. The eyebrows also are very distinguishable. Just remember, like with Luigi Mangione, he had the bushy ones. These are like well manicured, thin, skinny ones that if they're his real eyebrows, you would think you'd be able to pinpoint that person. 1-800-848-9222. We'll continue, guys, after the break here on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And it's a big night here on the Rita Cosby Show. A person has been detained in connection with the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. Let's go to Michael in Queens on line 2. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, hello, ma'am. How are you?
Good. What do you think?
Thank you for taking my call. I think this, as I've spoken in the past, I believe there was a prearranged situation. This video and this situation for a particular suspect is actually alluded to be proof of that. I do not believe it will only be this individual. What they need to do, and they can do this readily, you were correct when you said with facial recognition. Yes, they can identify through that measure. If there's any kind of a print, eye pattern, iris content, facial, anything, they can get an identification through systematics on that. I do know. There for them to do. But he will not be the only one. What I mean is it would have to be more than one individual, and it will not be more than 3. Why do I say that? Because 3 is too many to cover. And
yeah, no, that's a good point. Hey, Michael, do me a favor, stick with us because we chopped you off there. I want to finish with you afterwards. Stay with us because that's a good point.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Woolwich Township, New Jersey, where a teenage boy was pulled from an icy retention pond after police officers crawled onto thin ice and ultimately went into the water to reach him. The 13-year-old boy fell through the ice in the middle of the pond, and Sergeant Joseph Rieger said He was screaming for help. The young boy was out there for several minutes already when they arrived on scene, and they were worried that he was becoming hypothermic. So they tried ropes. The ropes were not effective, and then he moved toward the teen after hearing him yell that he could no longer feel anything. Officer Rieger then said once he started screaming that he couldn't feel anything, my fatherly instincts kicked in, and I just went out and got him. Now, crawling across the ice, the sergeant managed to reach the boy, but the ice gave way. He said, I tried to reach him to pull him onto the ice, and when I did that, we both went under. He then started throwing the young boy up onto the ice and breaking his own way back. Several other officers then immediately went into the water, making their way through the ice to rescue the sergeant. Luckily, both the boy and the sergeant were doing okay. They were taken out, both taken to the hospital, and both expected to be fine, thanks to the heroic work of our men and women in blue. Well, we're talking about the big developments tonight in this case. Let's go real quick back to Michael in Queens, and then we're going to be going to Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith with the National Police Association. She is there in Tucson on this big news night. Again, an individual detained just now, we're learning, in a traffic stop south of Tucson, that there was some sort of traffic stop south of Tucson, and a person has been detained for questioning in the Nancy Guthrie case. Boy, developments coming in fast and furiously. Michael, right before the break, I just want to have you finish your thought. It was a very powerful one, that you believe more than one person involved, but not that many. Can you pick it up again and explain why?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I say it will be more than one without a doubt, but it will not be more than three. Why? Because you must interweave the threads, but you have to tie off the ends. Three is enough if everyone is skilled to handle all the cords in the affair successfully, but more than three leaves loose ends for there to be people who would sell out the others, to actually turn tail, to actually offset the situation, to be unsuccessful. It's never a good measure. So it will not be more than three. I'm sure of that. In regards, but I do believe it will definitely be more than one. I have no question. As I said, it's prearranged, and I'd like to point this out. I do not believe it will only be the basis of these individuals. I believe the information, because I told you the first time that they have to have a prior to the house, because you can't go in an isolated, desolate area. Even in the dark, the military doesn't do that. They have a pre-existing plan. So these individuals knew too much, too far, too many about an 84-year-old woman. Somebody supplied the information, and I would put money that it would have come from a female in the life of that lady. Why do I say that?
Yeah, why do you say that?
Because not anything against women, because I respect women, I love women, believe me, I do. But women tend to speak of many personal affairs with each other beyond men. And if a woman has any reason to believe there's something possible that could get gained or gathered to their benefit, if they believe it's worth the cause, they would do and give that to other men who would be willing to commit the task.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, by the way, you had me on everything else, Michael. I'm not sure about that back half, but I think, there could be potentially a number of individuals. And one of the things, too, that we just learned also just recently was that the FBI director is saying that they're investigating persons of interest. They're definitely spending a lot of time around the sister's home, but we're not sure if there's any connection whatsoever to the family at this point, or neighbors. It could be guys, gals, who knows? But it's worth exploring, Michael. You never know. Never say never. This has been the wildest case. Michael, thank you very much. And now let's go to one of the great experts there in the country, Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith, former Chicago area police officer, also spokesperson with the National Police Association. She was a hostage negotiator, receiving training from the FBI, and also calling us from Tucson. So she is right there on the scene. Betsy, what have you heard about this person detained? The new news is just coming out, and you may already be aware of it, that somebody was detained in a traffic stop south of Tucson just a few minutes ago. Your thoughts?
Yes, we're hearing that. We're also hearing an unsubstantiated report of somebody being transported to a hospital. So I'm working on that as well. But But yeah, we knew, Rita, when this video came out, that somebody was going to recognize this person, whether it was law enforcement, whether it was a neighbor, a friend, a relative, whatever, and that the leads were going to start coming in fast and furious. We've also had, I got to give a shout out to the media here on the ground in Tucson. Of course, we have international media here. They've been really great about talking to people, about keeping their direct messages open on social media and funneling information to law enforcement. They have been super respectful of law enforcement here in Pima County, and we really appreciate that. But there's so much to break down with this video, and I think hopefully we're going to have this resolved in less than 24 hours, hopefully a lot sooner.
Yeah, I was going to say, now, Betsy, let's go through a couple of the things you just said. There's some reports out there that someone has been transported to a hospital. Do you know anything? I mean, are we suspecting it might be a nefarious person, or are we suspecting it might even be Nancy Guthrie?
Again, very unsubstantiated reports based on my networks here. That it could be an elderly person and that they are being transported. That's a very hopeful sign. Again, I cannot substantiate this, so I don't want to put it out there, but I thought I'd just let people know that we are talking here in Pima County and that the media, as well as our law enforcement sources, feel very hopeful with a lot of this. There's a lot of hope just in the last couple of hours.
What about also, obviously, the big break was this video. I mean, it's extraordinary to get this video. And when you see, what do you see when you're looking at this video that came out of the individual? They're going up to the doorbell cam, trying to disable it. It's a pretty clear picture of the individual. Even though he's got a ski mask on, there's a lot of identifying features.
Well, yeah, he's got this mask over a mask, and he's got these weird gloves that are anything from cannabis lab gloves to plumber gloves. You know, I've heard all kinds of things. I heard one expert, and I just thought this was humorous, that he had to be from out of the area because you can't buy a ski mask here in Pima County, Arizona. We actually have skiing here in Pima County about a half an hour away, snow skiing. So, you know, there's a lot of, quote unquote, a lot of experts that are talking about things. Here's the deal. And a lot of people are saying this guy's a clown. He's bumbling. He doesn't know what he's doing. My take on watching this guy is that he's overly confident. And I think he is approaching that door and goofing around with the camera and things like that because he's not worried about being caught. He doesn't seem to be worried about anyone being in that house that's going to call 911. I'm 20 years older than Nancy Guthrie, and if somebody comes and sets off my Ring camera at 2 a.m, you can darn well believe that I'm going to be calling the sheriff's department. And so I really think that's a place that they need to focus. And, you know, again, we not to bash the sheriff's department. God bless our Pima County Sheriff's Department, but there's some leadership issues and things that should have gotten done immediately did not get done, including the interrogations, the appropriate interrogations of the family members and things like that. So again, I also believe in watching this guy in the video, Rita, that this isn't the first time he's been there and that he's comfortable there. And that he doesn't seem to be worried to me at all. And lastly, he's front carrying that pistol, and a lot of people are saying,
right?
Yeah,
explain it. By the way, we had a couple of callers earlier. Explain why he's carrying it the way he is.
Right. That's called a Mexican carry. It's a very common thing with cartel members. Not that I think this is a cartel situation, but we are 80 miles from the border. It's also certain gang members, including sometimes you'll see that with Tren de Aragua gang members will do that. It also seems like, you know, he's got a holster that doesn't match the gun, that somebody, you know, gave him a gun. Here you go, use this, do that. I think he was definitely at the right house. In other words, this is not a random crime that he was going after Nancy Guthrie. But again, we don't know if he's going after Nancy Guthrie because she's Savannah Guthrie's mother or because she's just a fairly well-to-do lady in a nice, very dark neighborhood.
You know, you hit it on the head. It does look, though, like he clearly was going to get something inside or somebody inside. He also, what do you make of the fact his backpack is full on the way in? Because if his objective was a robbery gone awry or to rob her, you wouldn't have a full backpack unless he's been hitting up other houses, and there's been no reports of other houses that were hit up by this guy, at least in that time frame. So what do you think he's carrying in that backpack? And then also, Betsy, so many distinguishable features about him. I keep going back to these eyebrows because I'm looking at the pictures now. These eyebrows are like well manicured eyebrows, and it almost looks like he's a girl, but I think it's a guy. But they're very odd eyebrows.
I really thought about that because, you know, also that front carry of a gun is something females do a lot more than males do because we have different concerns. And but yes, those well manicured eyebrows and I you know, he's either holding a light in his teeth, which I think is what that is, but it could be metal. There's all of that. But that backpack, Rita, that backpack is stuffed to the gills with all kinds of things. If you're going to do a burglary, you're not taking a full backpack. So that it was likely things to be able to control Nancy Guthrie, unfortunately. And again, but why wasn't he worried about her calling the police? I know the FBI has already said they have multiple persons of interest. I suspect that there was somebody in that house that was already doing what needed to be done in there. And this guy was coming number two to the party here to do whatever nefarious activity that they were going to do. I also know that we have now our SWAT team, our Pima County SWAT team, deployed earlier. So the bomb squad. Bomb squad is back at the station. SWAT teams are still out, 2 different trucks. But we also have the FBI hostage rescue team here, and they have a great deal of expertise in rescuing hostages. So I also see that as a very hopeful sign because we're 10 days in, and this is an 84-year-old, somewhat unhealthy woman. So I find that very. Very hopeful. You know, one of the other things, absolutely. And listen, let's pray that there's a safe return of Nancy Guthrie. That would be an extraordinary and beautiful moment. The thing, Betsy, that I kind of also keep going to is exactly like you said. He looks so comfortable going into the house. He's in the house for 41 minutes, if you believe the time frame from when the camera was disabled that we were told to when they see sort of movement afterwards. So that's one thing. The other thing I'm wondering, they also said that there was a lot of footage that they had not released. So that we know that there were cameras. Remember, there were security cameras on the roof that they took. There were other things. I wonder if they captured some other moments that we just have not seen, to your point, that maybe somebody else was involved or maybe the departure of this individual with Nancy Guthrie. Well, and, the thing with this footage is it really takes time. Google has gotten involved. This is a Nest camera. That's their product. And they have to literally sort of strip the data, if you will, from this camera because, again, she didn't have the subscription, all of that. They've got to strip little pieces of data, if you will, and turn them into photographs. So that takes time. But, you've heard some things in the last few days, including, let's not forget, President Trump on Air Force One a few days ago saying, I think we're going to have something definitive soon. I think that perhaps this video was available perhaps a couple of days ago, and I think that the FBI is working multiple angles on this, that maybe they already had persons of interest. Now it's time to release the video to see if we can get cooperation of the public. Don't forget, Samantha Guthrie herself put out a video 24 hours ago begging people to get involved, begging people to help. It was a really different tone. And then again, with the ransom note, that kind of turned out to be a bust, although tonight there's been some activity in that Bitcoin. So could they be related or not? That's another thing. So I think the FBI has been spending a few days here in Pima County and elsewhere laying a bit of a trap, and I think it's coming to fruition.
Yeah, and probably maybe they had the individual already in their sights, monitoring that individual. And then when word got out that the footage was out, as you know, sometimes you can watch somebody's movements to see how they react. I go back, I think, Betsy, to the Boston Marathon bombers. When that footage came out, they suddenly went crazy. And then they started sort of barricading in, knowing in that case that their identities were fully out. This one, obviously, you know, it's not like the name and their face is full, but you see the camera. And if you know that that's you, suddenly they know that they're zeroing in on you. So maybe they were even monitoring an individual to see what that individual's reaction would be when the word got out, the footage was out, and that could have helped facilitate this arrest or at least detention, I should say, that we're seeing tonight. Betsy, do me a favor, please. If you hear anything in the next short while, obviously in the next hour or so, please call back if you get any other big breaking developments, because you're right in the thick of it there in Tucson.
Absolutely. You'll be the first person I'll let know, Rita.
Thank you very much, Betsy. We love you, and my audience loves you very much. Betsy, thank you very much.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you. The great Betsy Brantner-Smith from the National Police Association. And everybody, I'll be taking your calls when we come back. Boy, lots of developments tonight. And let's see if they indeed have a suspect. We know it's a person detained. What do we know about it? And what do we know from that footage? It is the biggest case in the country, and we're going to continue talking about it when we come back, as there may be some huge developments even in the next hour.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And we are continuing on this big news night, as now an individual has been detained in connection with the Nancy Guthrie case. Also, that person was stopped during a traffic stop. You would imagine, obviously, everything in their vehicle is now being searched. You would imagine everything on their phones and devices. Were they with anybody? We're waiting to see, but news is breaking fast and furious here tonight on the Rita Cosby Show. Let's go to Mike on the Lower East Side. Line 2. Mike, your thoughts tonight?
How you doing, Rita? Yeah, this guy could have been a gambler, and there's an Indian owned casino very close to Guthrie's house, you know, so they would have a lot of photos, you know, if this guy was a gambler. I mean, if he's packing his gun there, you know, he wants to shoot under the table. You know, they do that too, the gamblers. So, you know, he could have been a gambler, and they got tons of photos. You know,
by the way, Mike, the one thing I did wonder was there a sort of a money component to this, in the sense that did somebody owe money, like you just said, a gambling debt or a drug debt? You know, and you just heard from Betsy Brantner-Smith. You know, she doesn't know if there's any sort of gang or cartel related, but maybe somebody owed somebody money, and this was sort of the payoff. I mean, there could be a million things, but there is a familiarity with that house. And that's why I keep going back to probably somebody in that house that has some connections. Maybe it's a landscaper or a gardener, who knows? But definitely somebody with a lot of familiarity. And you see the way that they just kind of walk up to the house, not a care in the world. And then the other thing Betsy was saying brought up an interesting point, Mike, that maybe it's, you know, individuals working in cahoots, because we did hear from the FBI director, just said a few minutes ago, that they are investigating persons of interest, plural, persons of interest. And Betsy surmised that maybe this individual wasn't rushing because either he knew Nancy Guthrie habits, or that there was maybe somebody already inside dealing with Nancy Guthrie, that maybe they were working in conjunction with one another. We're probably going to have a lot more details in the next few minutes, guys. Stick with us. A very busy news night on the case that has captivated the country here on The Rita Cosby Show.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.